In this lesson, we will discuss the Navigation Display, ND Introduction, ADF VOR Display, Radar Display, ROSE ILS Mode, ROSE VOR Mode, ROSE Nav ARC Mode, and Optional Data Display. Navigational information can be presented in 5 different ways on the nav display unit. The various modes are selected by using the Mode Select switch on the EFIS control panel. The ROSE modes, ILS, VOR, and NAV, display information superimposed over a 360-degree compass rose. The yellow aircraft symbol is fixed in the center of the display, while the compass rose rotates around it. In ARC mode, the yellow aircraft symbol is located at the bottom of the screen, and only the forward 90 degrees of the compass rose is displayed. In plan mode, the flight plan legs are presented on a map oriented to true north. The center of the map corresponds to a waypoint selected by the pilot from the flight plan. The map is static, and the aircraft symbol, if visible, represents the present computed position of the aircraft as it moves along the flight plan, its orientation indicating true track. The pilot can slew the complete flight plan and view it for planning purposes. In all modes, ground speed and true airspeed are displayed in the upper left corner, as well as wind speed and direction. The digital wind information is in degrees true north, while the green analog arrow is magnetic. The arrow only appears for wind speeds greater than 2 knots. In all modes except plan, the yellow lubber line, fixed at the top of the moving white compass rose, indicates aircraft heading. The blue selected heading or track triangle shows the heading or track selected by the pilot. The actual aircraft track is displayed as a small green diamond. In ROSE modes only, small white triangles are fixed at 45-degree intervals around the circumference of the compass rose. In all modes except plan, when an ADF VOR select switch on the EFIS control panel is set to ADF, a green single-line bearing pointer for the number 1 ADF is displayed if the bearing data is available. The bearing pointers point directly to the station. When an ADF VOR select switch on the EFIS control panel is set to VOR, a white single-line bearing pointer for the number 1 VOR and a double-line bearing pointer for the number 2 VOR is displayed if the bearing data is available. Again, the bearing pointers point directly to the station. Nav aid information for ADF in green or VOR in white will be displayed at the bottom left side of the screen for number 1 receiver and the bottom right side of the screen for number 2 receiver. The first line indicates the type of nav aid selected. The second line displays the nav aid identification, and the third line shows DME distance, if it is available, for the selected VOR. A small representation of the applicable type of bearing pointer is also displayed next to the nav aid information. The weather radar, if on, is superimposed over the nav display in all modes except plan. There is a separate brightness control knob integrated with the nav display brightness control knob to adjust the intensity of the weather radar image. In ROSE ILS mode, the dagger-shaped magenta ILS course symbol points to the selected ILS course. The magenta localizer deviation bar moves laterally across the deviation scale. Each dot on the scale represents about 0.8 degrees of deviation. If the deviation exceeds 1/4 dot on either side, with an aircraft elevation above 15 feet radio altitude, the deviation bar and the scale will pulse. The glide slope deviation scale is on the right side of the display. Each dot represents about 4 degrees of deviation. The magenta glide slope deviation diamond moves vertically on the scale above and below a yellow reference line. If the deviation exceeds 1 dot, with the aircraft above 100 feet radio altitude, the diamond symbol and the scale will flash. The 3 lines in the upper right corner of the nav display show the ILS frequency, the selected course, and the ILS identification. In ROSE VOR mode, the course pointer is a blue dagger-shaped symbol that points to the VOR course selected by the pilot through the Flight Management Guidance System. The blue lateral deviation bar indicates the deviation along the lateral scale. Each dot on the scale represents a deviation of 5 degrees. When the deviation is greater than 2 dots, or 10 degrees, the bar remains displayed on the outer dot. The arrow on the end of the bar represents the to from indication. In the upper right corner, the selected VOR, the frequency, the identification, and the selected course are displayed. The message VOR approach appears in green at the top of the screen when the crew has selected a VOR approach through the Flight Management Guidance computer. The information presented in the ROSE nav mode and the ARC mode is the same, except that the ARC mode only shows the forward 90-degree sector of the compass rose. Navigational information, including the active flight plan, waypoints, and nav aids are shown. In the upper right corner of the display is information concerning the next waypoint to be overflown in the flight plan, the to waypoint. The name, the track to the waypoint, the distance remaining, and the estimated time of arrival are all displayed. The range select switch on the EFIS control. When the aircraft is flying the range select switch on the EFIS control panel selects the displayed range scale on the on-side nav display from 10 to 320 nautical miles. The selected range fills the screen. Therefore, in ARC mode, the viewable distance ahead of the aircraft is double that of the ROSE nav mode. Also, in ARC mode, there are 4 range arcs, each 1/4 of the selected range. In ROSE nav mode, there is only one inner range circle, which is 1/4 of the selected range, or half of the distance to the outer edge of the circle. When the aircraft is flying the active flight plan with the auto flight system nav mode engaged, the flight plan is displayed as a solid green line. When the pilot manually selects heading or track, the flight plan will be shown as a dotted green line and the track indication as a solid green line. The aircraft's lateral deviation from the active leg of the flight plan will be shown as either left or right cross-track error. The optional data display push buttons on the top of the EFIS control panel, when pressed, are used to display information on altitude and speed constraints, database stored waypoints, and stored VOR, NDB, and airport locations. Only one push button can be pressed at a time and is available only in the plan, ARC, or ROSE nav modes. Touch an optional data display push button, then the right arrow to continue.